So, hello everyone. Welcome to the discussion on the future of universities. My name is Irbins, CEO of company Orbitate, and this is my honor today to run this discussion. The purpose of this discussion is to exchange ideas among leaders in different sectors about what could be the future of education, of universities, with this all rapidly changing world around us in many sectors of technology, society, politics, and maybe even more. And let me first introduce our guests. I will start with Ingmārs Pūķis. Ingmārs is Vice President at the largest telecommunication company in Latvia, Vice President for Marketing and Development. Is that correct, Ingmārs? Yes, anything to add on you?
Well, just the thing that I think the reason for us being here is that for the last 7 years we've been trying to very much re-establish the connection between universities and industry in Latvia, and particularly in ICT industry, because there's a great demand for innovation, because there's so much new features that no one is using. So we're worried. So that's why we're here.
Cool. Thank you, Ingmārs. Next one is Rector of Riga Technical University, the largest technical university in Latvia and probably the Baltics, yeah. Right? Tālis, Juhna, yes, Tālis, something you can introduce a little bit yourself.
Well, yeah, as it was said, it's very important to train the right skills, and of course, as a university, we are very much concerned about what kind of skill sets is needed in future. So I'm looking forward to discussion.
Cool, thank you. And last but not least, we have maybe a person who is uniting industry and academia, is Dr. Frank Danesy, former head of HR division at European Space Agency, and the person who has personally been selecting astronauts that are flying and working currently in orbit around Earth. Yes, Frank, anything from your side?
Yeah, perhaps just to say, indeed, flying around Earth right now, Andreas Mogensen from Denmark is one of the ones that we hired at the time, and he's currently in space, so we wish him well. But just to chime in with what you both said, indeed, education is something extremely important. Qualifying people for the task ahead is extremely important, but doing it in the right way is as well. And so I think that that's also going to be a focus of the discussion that we have today.
Cool. All right, let's dig in, and maybe we start our discussion with more general topic to get down to the discussion, particularly on universities and how universities will change or have to change, or where they will going to change, and what will universities look like in the future. Maybe we should start with bigger megatrends, global trends. So how about you share your opinion? What are those global megatrends, not only in technologies, but maybe also in social aspects, in political aspects, that we will be facing maybe in the next 5 to 10 years? Ingmārs, maybe you start. Since you're more closer to those global trends.
Well, I think one big issue right now here is the noise. So there's incredible noise of things going on, and it's kind of a white noise, and it's full of ideas, full of new technology, and everybody is getting nervous. And I think one of the big roles of universities here is to still, as it was like many hundreds of years ago, is actually to build in some system to get you navigate around this. Because of course there's this classical statement these days that all the knowledge gets old as you leave the university, and that might be true for some professional skills, but there are some systemic knowledge that you still have to actually, even whatever is going to happen with artificial intelligence or whatever other new hype technology, there still has to be some understanding as what you as a professional do and how do you manage all these new features. Therefore, we do not expect that all the education will happen through TikTok. That's probably still not going to happen. So and above all this noise, what we see from the commercial side is that there are still classical competencies of, I don't know, mechatronics or engineering. You still have to be able to make a fridge or a chair. that actually stands. So these are still competencies that you have to be able to understand whatever new technology comes on top of that. From commercial perspective, of course, the other big thing, I think, which is there's a big demand, and this is going to be even more intense, is a demand for innovation and ability to commercialize whatever you have, your nice ideas that you might have. And probably in Europe in particular, we have to be careful about this, because probably the tradition of commercializing good ideas is not as strong in Europe as it should be these days. This is probably one of our areas where we have to do some extra training or extra fitness, right?
Okay. Tālis, maybe from your perspective, Ingmārs mentioned already megatrends like artificial intelligence or robotics. What else? What are the other megatrends that you believe would be influencing the way we learn, the way we educate ourselves?
I think we're already observing this, that formerly you used to go to university and then you graduate and then you get a job and maybe you never come back to education, or you might take some courses here and there. But I think what happens is that you have to prepare yourself, and universities are the major driver for that you need to be studying or become educated, but then you have to re-educate yourself again and again and again. And it is related to all technology cycles, which are very short now. So I think that's something we observed already, like lifelong education, which we have to be more and more involved. So it's something what we observe right now, and it become more and more prevalent in future. So, and as it was said, that you have different ways, you can use online education, etc. But then we have to offer a competitive advantage, which is, campus life and ability to, be in groups, working maybe on prototypes, something which is more hands-on. And this is something which I see as our competitive advantage to be part of the trend. Mm-hmm. So this is one. And I think the second is that in general, universities, they have to be more agile, not just for where you are teaching, but in general, as was mentioned about innovation, science. So we have to kind of forget about the ivory tower we've been standing for centuries, and they have to kind of come down and become part of this very agile way now the world is operating.
Frank, something for you to add?
Certainly to piggyback on the idea of agility, I completely see that. I think that the relevance of universities in the long term will remain, though. In the end, it will be the hub of knowledge building and knowledge conveying. But essentially, I see three megatrends worth mentioning. One was already mentioned, the technological aspect, the impact that's going to have on the future of work. AI, the future of work. A second is at the social level, something that we haven't actually spoken about yet. But if you look at the age distribution, the pyramids, the age pyramids in the various European countries, in the vast majority of them, it's an upside down pyramid. And what that means is that we have a part of the population, a large part of the population, the baby boomers, who are leaving the job market or have already left the job market. And if you look at the young generation that's now coming into the job market, the workforce, that's a much smaller population. Now, how do we compensate for the difference between this large part of the population that's leaving? And they're still going to be around for a while, at least for another 20 years. They're still going to be eating, they're still going to be traveling even more than they were before, and so forth and so on. And so in one way or another, that has to be compensated for, and that's coming our way. And we see it in various countries already now, that there's a deficit of manpower, a deficit of staff, of employees that you can hire. And then, of course, the third point, which is perhaps the first point, is the political situation. There is, an elephant in the room, the tensions surrounding democracy and the threat to it. And when we speak about democracy, we also speak about democracy of education.
Cool. Before we go and dig even deeper into the context of universities, still would like to bring up the question, do you believe that all the emerging artificial intelligence breakthroughs with robotics, where more on, even you see latest developments at Tesla, where robots are being built to substitute people, do you believe those big technological changes like artificial intelligence, like robotics, they will change job markets in the future? Is there a risk for really big changes, or is this just another big hype, like it was internet thing back in the beginning of the 21st century? So how would you describe the threat of artificial intelligence and robotics and other similar megatrends with potential impact on how we do jobs, how we do businesses?
Well, I think first of all we should call it an opportunity rather than a threat. This will bring about change. This is, I think, rather clear. I think it will still follow the classical Gartner chart. I think we are right now in the absolute inflation point. Everybody who is not lazy is saying something about AI, and probably most of them do not really realize what they're talking about, which is okay. This is a part of this kind of festivity, right? So within a year or two, we will talk much less, but still in the background, all the important teams will still continue work as it always has. So as within 5 to 10 years, this change will be very significant. Probably not as crazy as we scream, but this is going to be clearly significant because people have been working on AI for decades. So this is kind of an inflection point for right now. So there is some significant milestones. This will change, but this will be just as important change as many technological changes we've seen over the last 100 years. So probably this is a good opportunity. People who do very stupid jobs, they will probably do something else. This is, yeah.
I think there's been a lot of discussion, of course, what kind of jobs will be lost and what kind of job will appear. I would just maybe concentrate more on what we are preparing, the engineering jobs, and we already see that, of course, the engineers you will still need engineers, of course, but the skill set is much more different. In fact, I think there's also opportunity, because usually when you talk about engineers, somehow you relate it to the male profession. But now with artificial intelligence, robotics, etc., you could have more and more females actually entering STEM, because you don't have to use so much of human power, more of your hands and more of your brains and IT technology. So I think there is already many trends happening in terms of, for example, how do you design building using. If you take example of this faculty where we are, the civil engineering mechanical faculty, so they already are teaching how to use so-called beam systems. So when you design in 3D, so I think it's changing, and way you are teaching also future engineers is also already changing. So these megatrends certainly are influencing. But I'd like to just mention one which is more maybe haven't been mentioned yet, but I think it will play more and more role in future. It's everything about bioengineering. Of course, this is a kind of future where actually we have our study program bioengineering, and this I think we have to see this as the I think next hype after IT and artificial intelligence, or even in parallel, bioengineering would be also something we have to look into.
Frank, you have something to add?
Yeah, just to add, I think that it's essentially already been said. The point is that it really depends on the nature of the work, the type of the work that people are doing. That is to say that the more reproducible it is through the machine, the likelier it is that that particular kind of work will vanish. And I think that summarizes it.
What do you think, guys, about business perspectives in the future? You can hear more and more people talking that all the big things have been discovered. We've heard these things before, people saying, okay, everything has been discovered. Can we say there's still room for next Google or for next Facebook or next WhatsApp? Do you believe there's still possibility for young generation to come up with really crazy, innovative things, or it's all going to be controlled by big global corporations and you will be only part of one big organization? What's your? It's a little provocative, but
That was really dark.
yes, yes.
Yes,
It's not just a nice room. You know?
No, it's very dark fantasy. I think this has been happening over and over again. I think this will happen again. The bigger the company gets, the more boring it is. The harder it is for the big company to do something new. It can normally buy something, but even that has some limits, right? So many big companies truly struggle to stay afloat for as long as possible. But there is some, I don't know, biological cycle for this. So I really do not see any prerequisites to have some apocalyptical scenarios. So the young startups will come, surely. And I think there are even more and more prerequisites for that to happen with that aforementioned AI functionality. There is less and less limits for somebody to be, because historically, of course, the bigger you were, theoretically, that gave you more and more advantage. These days, there are a lot of, the democracy of entrepreneurship, I think, is still increasing, whatever is happening on the political side. I think the ability for different parts of the world to be creative, I think, are increasing rather than decreasing. And I think the Silicon Valley, many years now, is not holding the monopoly on being super cool, right? So I think there are many opportunities for young people in the future, surely.
Cool, thank you.
And I think that the big companies, they have to be really aware and find ways how they work with the smaller, more agile companies, because again, coming back to the technology cycles, we notice, for example, for large corporative companies, the R&D departments, they have to think about ways how do they, again, work with maybe universities or startups, because you have to bring new fields of expertise and maybe even the products you will never think about as a company, So how do you bring completely new areas? Like, Kodak was a notorious example, where they try to stay where they are. So, and this is one of the challenge of the large corporative companies. So whether they work with the startups or they take shares of startups, so they have to find ways in order to survive in future. I think it's something they have to be really aware that the small companies, they are more able to adapt to these shorter technology cycles than the large guys. So I think this is rather maybe the risk for them than for the small companies.
Let me ask you, Frank, particularly, and then break the cycle of 1, 2, 3. You've been selecting top of the top people for the past 30 years with European Space Agency, even astronauts. Do you see from your experience, do you see there are some critical skills that have been going throughout your career that are very essential for people to be successful and productive at what they're doing?
Yes, absolutely. Of course, there are the differences between the various professions, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, financial experts, but there are certain skill sets, call them soft skills, that people that we typically hired really had to bring along. The team skills, the communication skills, the ability to think analytically, to synthesize, things like that. And these are things that, the analysis and the synthesis you probably still learn in university, but the communication skills is not necessarily something that's taught. The team skills is probably not something that's taught. So these are things that we have very much focused on.
Okay. Something from your experience, what you think is
yeah, I think
the critical skills?
I think the ones mentioned, and there has been a lot of discussion, how to really for universities to teach these skills better. So what we do, we try to focus more now students working on challenging projects together, starting with the very first year. So then these kind of skills can learn only when you're really doing it. It's not, you learn during the lectures or something. So what we try to do is really try to organize more kind of project based on or problem based kind of ways you teach students, working into multidisciplinary teams, working on challenges. And that's where you see, how do you really pick the partner in your team, how do you organize the work, who is taking which role, how to present, how to communicate. So this should go in parallel with your professional skills that you gain during, for example, engineering study. Certainly, it's not just fantasy, it's reality, because when you talk to the companies, already now, they are looking for these kind of skills in the first place, and then maybe they say, okay, they normally say, we need a kind of decent person who is able to communicate, and of course, we want that he has some basic knowledge about, engineering and etc.
I think one more thing we are looking for and we shouldn't be missing is critical thinking and not such a big acceptance of authority, because these days I think there is and in particular for this generation there is so much pressure and so much mind control happening from all the possible media 24/7 that actually having a person that thinks on his own that's a big value, and I mean and trying to break the cycle and this is not such a common thing, because somehow the social media train people to be the same, but we can also observe this happening in the music, for instance. So the music tends to be the same, and all the things tend to be the same. So the very high value is for your colleagues or future colleagues who are able to break it.
Cool. Let me get a little bit more extreme with you, we can observe that all technologies are becoming more and more complicated, and knowledge areas and academic areas becoming more and more focused. For example, people who are studying dentistry, you have specialization maybe in one particular part of instruments for dentistry, and so on. And you can observe it almost in any industry. Everything is becoming more and more, let's say, separated from each other. With that in mind, and maybe Ingmārs, you would be first to answer this. Do you believe that the modern company, big company, is it possible for companies to have people, employees, who might not have a good academic background, but they are good at actually doing some small particular things, and they have the good team learning skills or communication skills, and they come and they learn in half a year that this is something they have to do about the equipment or with the papers or something, and they start doing it without very deep and 3 and 4 years long education.
Well, the longer you live, the more you notice there are people who are getting things done. They're very important, irrelevantly of their education. There is some specific set of temperament or cognitive capacity that people sometimes they tend to be called managers or something like this. But there is some huge layer in our society, in our corporate structures. They are particularly meant for this problem, that all these specialists are going deeper and deeper and deeper into the knowledge caves of Moria. They just go dig and dig and dig. So for them not to get lost, this layer of the intermediaries, it actually grows. But this is nothing probably wrong. I think there is no escape. So I do believe that from our own experience, one thing we are trying to accomplish and actually do, as my company also happens to become more and more fragmented. So there are more and more fields we are involved in. So One way how to deal with this is actually delegation of authority. So we're trying to get as much of authority away from the board and get it downstairs, so that the people have more and more autonomy on their own to make their decisions and make the incentives for more decisions being made on much lower levels.
What about you, Tālis? Do you believe this direction that there are some jobs that could be done without education? For example, you can see in social media advertisements, take a 3-week or 6-week course on software testing, and you go there and you get a job right away. Is this a potential threat for universities?
But I think if you really want to get good job done, you have to understand what you are doing, you know. So and this is what universities are kind of helping to understand the concepts, you know. That's why you learn math and physics, and then you can use this knowledge maybe in other fields. That's true, but you cannot, because in this way you kind of losing your you know, you can lose against robots. I would put it this way, you know, because one of the advantages that of human beings is that they have this ability to create new things, and in order to do so, they have to understand the kind of concepts very deeply. And I think this is something what universities should and they offer at the moment. And then on top of that, you can add new skills. And I think this again the community life in a campus, the teamwork and everything around kind of more social interaction still is very important, and it will be even more important in future.
Yeah, maybe Frank, you could elaborate on this, but let me challenge you even more on this with examples. There are, I think, getting more and more jobs where you actually don't have to know everything, like fixing nails or fixing cars. You don't have to go really into the chemistry or molecular biology. Yeah, you just plug in, you tell the computer, and it fixes. So, so what do you think, Frank? Is it what kind of society we're moving forward? Is it that we are going to have more jobs where you actually have to dig very deep and have to know very well to be good at what you're doing, or we are getting more people who will just be good enough if they know how to install some things, even if it's a computer or robot, and you don't have to have the whole education background?
I think to answer that, we need to look at the big picture, and we also need to look at it over time. If you look at what's become completely normal today, or what has been until not so long ago, which is that people had to have a high level of education in order to do certain types of jobs. That wasn't always the case. I mean, if you go back, say, 40 years, maybe 50 years, then what happened was exactly the opposite, where people with lesser qualification suddenly had to make way to people who had a greater qualification, although that greater qualification wasn't really necessary in order to get the job done. So what we're seeing today is exactly the opposite trend, where because highly qualified people aren't available anymore in such large numbers, companies are actually starting to think about the qualifications that they really need to have rather than the nice to have. So yeah, I think that we're moving back into this sort of situation that we were already in economically many years ago. That said, there will always be a requirement. There will always be a requirement for a very substantial amount of knowledge. In the end, these short courses that we're talking about, to me, are like a mosaic. I give you a piece of a mosaic. If you don't have the total picture, if you don't know, or a puzzle, if you don't know what the entire picture looks like, how are you going to know what to do with that piece? And this is where universities come in, the holistic view on things.
Yeah. A little bit to add on this, I think, from very practical examples, what we've seen. Of course, you let's say, as you mentioned, this example with testing, and there might be, of course, some cases where person can grow out of this into something more complex. But what we are seeing right now and there have been many attempts also in Latvian industry to actually make these courses how to transform adult person into an IT person. But if this person at the very deep level in his school years. If he has failed in mathematics, there is nothing you can help. There is nothing. I mean, that's why we are right now having this big discussion with the Ministry of Education that around grade 6 there's this big wall where people are separated into two parts. Part of people who can still understand something in the mathematics, and the others the part who doesn't. So we have to save this others, because there is no reason that person should not understand mathematics. There are some stigmas, and there's lots of big discussion about this one. But if you lose this person at the grade 6, there's nothing you can do.
Let's go on this, and maybe Tālis, back to you to talk a little bit more into education from general perspective. We are creating more and more knowledge as a society. We're growing more, and to become an engineer in some particular, even simple area, it takes more knowledge to get than it was maybe 50, 60, not to mention 100 years ago, when for you to be good at factory, it's enough to multiply and divide, and you don't need trigonometry or more complicated higher mathematics. My question is, do you think from academic point of view, and this might be a little bit controversial, but that's my role, and we've had discussion about why should we learn mathematics, and we say that yes, we need mathematics, we need critical thinking, but why not leave the whole big chunk of calculations and formulas to the machines, to the learning, maybe to clever machines, but learn critical thinking, analytical thinking through practical life experiences, and then just giving to the machine a command, please calculate me if this material can withstand this pressure, and you don't have to do it yourself, but you can give it. Can we from learning perspective give some part of calculations and hard mathematical jobs to machines?
Yeah, but we do it, and I think that learning mathematics is not about getting all the skills. No, I put it this way: the way why we learn mathematics in schools and why we need for engineering, just to learn what you just said about critical thinking. And of course, as soon as you understand the concept, you put in a HPC machine and they do calculation. I give you a very simple example. If you do, I'm also teaching several courses, and one is on bioreactor theory. So it's quite complex. You have to solve many partial differential equations to calculate, for example, what would be the biomass concentration depending on temperature, etc., in the reactor. So what you could do one way is just, okay, you write the equation, you take it from the paper or something, and you plug in and push the bottom, and you get something out. That's it. Is it enough for the students? If they do so, do they understand really what happens? Not sure, because if they would make error on one one number, they get completely different, result, and they even do not understand why it's different. So what we say is that you kind of need to understand the concept. You can actually, what we ask to do the very simple math with these figures to understand, okay, you are going in the right direction, and then you use your HPC machine and big data just to make it more accurate. But if you miss this, then you have cases, I'm sorry to mention Maxima, this collapse of the buildings. Why? Because you missed the big picture. As you said, you have to understand the big picture. And then you put your math on the top of it. And the learning mathematics is exactly for that, to see, because mathematics, it's internally consistent kind of science, right? So, and if you change something, then something goes out and at this different end, and you have to understand that there is relationship. And that's why you learn mathematics. But of course, you will forget all differential equations, as you start working as engineers. Even you learn all the Fourier transformation in the first year.
Cool. Frank, and then you, Ingmārs, on on universities. What would you, Frank? You've been running a big organization. What would be your requirements from universities? What would you expect universities to deliver from the students? Or future workers?
Two different angles I can take on that. The one is to ensure at all times, but I think that universities do that, to stay relevant. So to really understand what the trends are, the new developments are, and to incorporate them in the curricula. So that's one point. The other point is also to take account of developments that we see today, and that also speak to changes that we see with Generation Z, which is to provide intermediate steps. We see a lot of students leaving universities here across Europe. And from our point of view, this is an issue that is happening because these kids, if I can call them that, don't know what they're actually getting into. They lack the information up front. And then when they're in that situation, they suddenly discover, oops, this isn't for me. And so rather than to be able to make a course correction into another discipline, they basically have to abandon everything that they did up to that point and start over. And this is wrong. This is something that should change.
Cool. Ingmārs, your take.
Oh, that's a big question to ask. A little bit building on what Frank said, is one angle is of being relevant. If we take a look at for our particular region, I think we should two things. One is to support the ability of our society to invest and build a population of competencies that we do not have right now. Like we have this one example we're trying to accomplish with a great support from RTU is answering the question: do we as a country have any role in chip ecosystem? Because the quick answer would be no, of course not. But if you think a little bit deeper, there are many niches and opportunities where you could actually build on. And this is a clear role of, as we see, of Riga Technical University, actually, that within 5, 6, 7 years, there would be a population of people who would be able, in rather large numbers, that would be able to participate in the discussion or the industry of making chips. So this is one role, a very strategic role of universities we see. And the other role is probably, and again, in our particular region, is to restart the idea that a significant part of society can become scientists, because this is somewhat a lost dream. Like back in the day, like me myself, I had this idea, but it was completely obvious for me that I will be not able to sustain my family if I become a scientist. So I went somewhat a different road. But today there's many opportunities for young people to actually do science. And this is, I think, rather beautiful, and that's a beautiful mission that can be done by the universities.
You want to add, Tālis?
Well, indeed, if you look at the numbers, that the number of scientists in Latvia per capita is relatively low. I mean, and there's a great opportunities for young students to become researchers at universities, and not only. I think as university, as a science university, what we try to do is we try to integrate the research skills learning within the curriculum, because the science university is not just about using knowledge but creating knowledge, and one way is using science. Maybe there are other ways, I don't know, but obviously if you talk about evidence-based kind of knowledge, then that science is the only way, and it doesn't mean that you have to become a scientist, but the skills what you will learn, tackling difficult problems, finding solution, doing tests and proving it, that would be very useful in your life, even if you work as engineer or the manager.
Let me come back on what Frank mentioned about the dropouts, and this is something that I've been looking into, and I was shocked in a way to see such a big dropout rates in universities, not just across Europe, but Asia, Americas, everywhere. The amount of go to up to 50, 70%. Some universities and some faculties are seeing 50, 70% dropout rates throughout the career. So Tālis, maybe, what's your take? Why do you think, what's the reason for that?
Well, that is very interesting you mentioned this, because yesterday we had a kind of discussion among 4 rectors from different engineering universities. It was from Denmark, from Eindhoven, Taltech, and me, and we just were discussing exactly this, how to reduce the dropout rate. And I have to say, this is a little bit specific for country, so you cannot generalize it. Okay. Because, I mean, if you take in Eindhoven, they had 20% of dropout rate, and in our case, it could be 40%. And then the situations are a bit different, but there are some commonalities, and one is that that in our case, students are getting jobs quite early, which is good on one hand, but on the other hand, if they're getting jobs on the second year, then they have different priorities. In Latvia case, this is, I think, the main reason. It's not the case, for example, in Holland so much. 99% of bachelors, they continue actually for master. They are not getting jobs because companies, they want that they're getting master degree. In our case, maybe second year students, they're already getting jobs. So this is not for us, number one. Number two, and this could be generalized, is still mathematics and physics skills. And it's not just in Latvia, it's also in Europe, because one of the most of the students, they're dropping out in the second semester. And then actually when they have to get a bachelor degree, this is another kind of milestone. But so the mathematics skills and physics, something they are not getting from the high school. So this is number two. So, and of course there are other things, but interestingly, when we had a discussion in Norway about this problem, one of the rectors from that university, I think in Oslo University, said, so, but what was the problem? 99% of dropouts, they're getting jobs anyway. So somehow they're getting into the market. And, but I think, of course, you can not go for 100%. You always have some limitations. But I think if it's half of the students which are not finishing the universities in time, it's too much.
Ingmārs, why are you hiring those second-year students as industry? What's wrong with you?
Actually, I don't. Our HR department is very strict regarding the completion of of university education. So we have very low numbers but there is I think the answer to this lies to what Frank said, because the population is getting old. There is a big pull from work market, so companies are willing to take whomever is not completely stupid, is get them on board, and this is what we are seeing. So the level of ambition on the company side is falling because there's a lack of employees. So this is exactly how it looks on the other end.
Frank, just continuing on the discussion, what do you think is the direction when you see on one hand students going and finding jobs in the second year, maybe even sometimes the first year, not completing maybe the degree, but going to the job market, and there's this pull from the job market. Where do you see the direction or the tendency with this? Do you think the young people will try to find jobs as fast as possible and then catch up with the education slowly, little by little, or you think that we still have to get students, as Ingmārs is telling, we need them to finish the degree and then get the job?
I think unless we're talking about little bite-sized pieces of additional education, to get a full education while being employed is a challenge that I think most students would not be able to sustain. So if there's a high dropout rate among students who are only students, I'm pretty certain that the dropout rate among those who are working at the same time while studying is going to be even larger. So from that point of view, the sense that I always had while looking at candidates is that they should really have gone as far as they intend to go with their education when we bring them into the organization, realizing full well that whatever their educational choice was, that will have consequences. You're not going to become a chief executive of the organization if your education, at least in an engineering organization like ESA, if the top level of your education was web design. It's not going to happen. So from that point of view, yeah, I mean, there are different levels of positions and organizations. In the end, speaking in terms of HR, in the end, it's the job that you're looking at, and every job has certain requirements attached to it. And those requirements then determine what the requirements are that the candidates have to bring along. It's really that simple.
Great. Let's talk a little bit about perspectives or the future of education. Maybe, Tālis, this would first go to you. But we see already in this discussion that there are groups of young people who would just after high school or even before that find themselves in some trades. Some would like to find jobs right away. Some would do some study and then find a job. Some would do the full study and then find the jobs. What we see the tendency all across the world, and education experts talking about individual or personalized approach towards education. How do you see the university, which are very, very big organizations where students have to attend courses and do lectures and exams and everything that required to be in an organization? How can we build universities being more personalized towards education? How do you see the education would look so that everyone gets what they can get out of the education?
I think it was already mentioned that we perhaps need more flexibility, so the students, they can start with one program, for example, and then they understand, okay, I rather become mechanical engineer, and so they can specialize or select another program, another courses, not the program but the courses. So it's kind of a la carte kind of approach. So they pick more of the courses and they can select them more specific for their needs and skills. And of course, this is a question about the size of university, because of course for the small university it will be very difficult to make so much electives. But as universities are growing, and so this provides more opportunities for students to say in the second year, and actually this has been already studied, that this is allowed to reduce dropout rates. They decided to go to different area and they still stay in university. So I think this is one way to become more, to provide more elasticity in selecting the courses. And the second is that to have more, the way it's kind of didactic way, how do you teach? If you have this more, project-based kind of courses. Of course, you have lectures, but then you have a kind of problem-based courses where you work in smaller groups, and then you understand that where you can contribute your skills in the best way. So basically, it's not just about lecturing and the practical work, but also really more hands-on type of projects, and this would allow you to really find where you fit the best your skills.
Frank, you want to add?
Yeah. On one of the things that I think are so interesting about a university is the fact that you actually can choose the courses that you choose. But the courses that you choose are typically within the silo of a given discipline. And the thing that I was thinking about earlier goes more along the lines of that there are certain types of knowledge, certain courses, say, that are transversal between disciplines. We've spent a lot of time talking about one of them, which is mathematics. So if I want to become an engineer, I better know some math. But by the way, if I want to become a psychologist, I also better know some math. If I want to become a professional manager, I better know some math. If I decide to switch out of engineering and go study management, does that mean that I have to take the math course again, or will the course that I took at engineering school still be recognized at the new school? Another example is research design. I don't know at what level you offer or require students to do actual research, but to give them a proper introduction into research design is not a bad idea, no matter what the discipline is. And so, these are just two examples. I'm sure I could, we all of us could come up with more, but to take courses like these that are offered in one discipline and to carry them over into another discipline, point one, and point two, to allow in that other discipline a certain number of electives, so that if I took engineering for a couple of, say for a semester, and decided that it wasn't for me, that I can still take those engineering courses up to a point into my business program or into my liberal arts program and not actually lose time in the process.
Yeah, cool.
Wanted to mention just one, I think, obvious elephant in the room. As you said before, a few years ago, I happened to be in the Boston for Digital Universities Week, great happening, where American universities discuss what is going to happen. I think what we also have to realize that there is and will be even more growing competition for big names in the States, because they're all digitalizing their product, and they're going for micro credentials to actually, so you can actually have the paper from Harvard or MIT, wherever you are on the planet. You don't necessarily have to go to Boston and study here. So I think this is one big trend, that if you have a big and powerful team that creates good, powerful content with a good name, I think this will be all over this place. So this will be a competition particularly for lifelong studies, I think.
Great. To summarize all of our discussion, I think we've had a lot of good arguments here from different perspectives. Let's put down some visions. What would universities look like? What do you think the universities should or would look like in 5-10 years, taking account all the mega trends we're having, all the changes, all the technologies coming up, all the problems that companies are facing, and the shortage of people? What do you think would universities look like? Let's be really visionary about this. Who wants to start? Yes, Ingmārs.
I have much less responsibility here, so I can talk whatever I want. I can talk whatever I want. Yeah. No, I know. I would more like to try to summarize from what I heard today. What we were talking today here is, and I will take a little bit regional look here. So I will not. I don't care so much about Cambridge or Harvard here. I more care about the universities in our region, and I do believe that they will be hubs for innovation. They will bring back science to our region, which is very important. This is one big tough vision. I think they will be more focused. Right now we have a very large amount of fragmentation in universities and higher education right now in our region. So they'll be less fragmented, more focused on science and innovation. And I think there'll be much more partaking into lifelong education for all people.
Like us. So let me summarize. So your take would be hubs of innovation and lifelong learning.
Yeah, of course. I think they should be kind of lighthouse of knowledge, whatever it means. But I think indeed, because the advantage that you have opportunity to know that knowledge which will be used after 10 or 20 years, this is something what universities should hold on, because these things will be sometimes used by the companies, by society, and you have to keep this kind of one kind of step ahead always, and being able to be brave and also come up with the new ideas. And these ideas should be done together with students. Mm-hmm. So not keeping them away from science, keeping them within the loop as they are studying, because the students will become future engineers, etc. And again, I agree that we have to be facilitators, also related to new technologies, working more closely with business, helping to create also new businesses, at least for engineering universities I'm talking about. And the third, I think this is something inevitable, that we have, the universities will become more global. Talk about Europe, because the knowledge, the experts, actually, if you take one specific area, they are quite limited even at European level. So you want that your professor is a top-notch professor in a specific area, so you can, using maybe online education or different kind of model. So from Denmark, he comes to Riga, and he's teaching to the students of, multidisciplinary student group in Latvia. So to have it more open, both in terms of student mobility and also in mobility on staff, providing the best knowledge what you can have.
Okay, very good. So to summarize, universities also a global players, and being brave enough also to challenge back the industry and other elements of the society. Cool. Frank?
Yeah, I think I would reduce it to 3 points as well. The one is to continue ensuring relevance in key areas. So in terms of society, in terms of technology, and so forth. The second is to be strategic, to really look at the big picture and to understand what the strategic priorities have to be of the university, of the institution, in order to not just move the institution forward, but also to move society forward. And the third point, which is often in the strategic concept, the one that is neglected, which is to measure whether you're actually moving toward those objectives or not. So how do you know whether what you've done was a success or not? By defining it as a success after you've done it is hardly the way. And which, by the way, is not just something I find in academia. It's also something that I find in the companies as well. But those are the 3 points. So stay relevant, be strategic, and check your work.
Great. Thank you very much for this great discussion. Maybe on a closing note, your advice to the young people who might be listening, watching to us. What does it take to become successful in whatever they want to do? What would you suggest? Who wants to go?
Well, for one reason, one thing, I think it's obvious you should study some mathematics. This is my advice, I guess.
I would say, do not underestimate the knowledge, deep knowledge. Do not understand. This would be very important for your life. If not now, then in future.
Frank, you have an honor to close.
I might surprise you with what I'm going to say, but I say follow your passion. Because if I think about all the outstanding people that I have had the privilege to hire over the years, that was the one common denominator, the passion that they had for the work that they did.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone who joined us. I think maybe if we have some questions, and if somebody wants to ask the questions from the audience, yes.
Thank you for a nice conversation. I'm Ekaterina Kuzmina. I'm presenting 2AM company. We work with new materials for aerospace industry, and we speak about future of universities and about future. And also is important to have future equipments. And actually the question to you, to Rector of RTO University, if you are going to buy new equipments for researches, because we also have projects with RTO for testing materials and for research. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's, of course, you cannot do any science if you don't have equipment, and obviously this is one of the challenge for universities, because the technologies are evolving so rapidly. You have to renew equipment every year almost, and certainly we will. And regarding material science, certainly everything which is available in the market using, advanced measurements, for example, for materials, certainly we will try to buy the newest and most advanced one.
Yeah, I think, as Rector said, it's part of being, Frank said, being relevant, right? Good.
So can I comment? Yeah, in case we have a list for equipments we would like to have, if it's possible to discuss, we would highly appreciate it. And also we would like to get some students who also make researches according to our topics. We also have companies in international level with who we collaborate, and we know the problems in aerospace industry, so we would like to develop here it in Latvia. And with RTO, of course, as well.
Yes, send us your wish list.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, send us. Thank you anyway for engaging in this. I would suggest...
I wanted to quickly comment. We actually have this exact experience with RTU. We have actually signed the agreement as a commercial entity with RTU, so we are sharing scientists on the kind of 50-50 principle. So we're actually, there's a joint research programs we're having from commercial side and from the RTU side, and using the doctors and scientists, the RTU. So this is an existing framework you can actually use.
All right, everyone. I think because we're also short on time, thank you everyone who joined us on whatever platform you're looking at. Thank you for those who joined us here. Thank you guys for coming in. Really appreciate your thoughts, your discussions. I hope this initial discussion brings more discussion in other places, in other universities. So thank you again, and hope we can meet again on a similar topic in a year or even sooner. Thank you very much, everyone.